When I finished my duty as an officer in the Army after attending the Army Academy, I married my then-girlfriend and moved in with her. My first daughter Vanessa was born. A few years later, my son Cole was born. A few years later, a new neighbor moved into the small, overgrown, abandoned-looking house next door. I am not over-welcoming outgoing, but my wife was. She baked a welcome pie and planned on giving it to my neighbor as a welcome to the neighborhood. I was not thrilled when she told me this, but I agreed to go with my wife so she would not get upset. When we knocked on the door at first, there was no response. A beat-up-looking car was in the driveway, so someone was home. My wife knocked again, but almost in unison. There was a creak on the other side of the door, almost like a foot stepping toward the door. I straightened up in preparation, but the door never opened. It was around now when I felt an uncomfortable sensation of being observed by something I couldn't see. Out of instinct, I darted my head to the right. The blind to the window shuffled as someone pulled their head back quickly. But it was not quick enough. He had a receding hairline, but his eyes were the scariest. I only saw one peeping through the crack of the blind. It was an extremely white blue, but his eyelid was wide open enough to see the curvature of his eyeball and the half-sphere's shape. I knew evil when I saw it. I got my wife and me out of there as quickly as possible. There was only one upside to this encounter. We got to have pie for dinner with the kids. The following night in bed, as my wife was knocked out, I was stuck up staring at the ceiling, eyes peeled, thinking about today's and tomorrow's issues. That was until a blood-curdling scream broke my thoughts. I darted up. My wife did as well. My heart was pounding. My thoughts were too overwhelming to put them together to make a plan, so I sat there in silence with my wife. Waiting for something else to happen, it did, an almost identical scream to the last a few minutes later. This time, I was nearly prepared for it. I could direct my thoughts more clearly now and put together the screams from that new neighbor's house. I opened the drapes and looked out the window. All of the windows in the house were boarded up. The door was locked shut. I then noticed a bright red light seeping through the cracks of the wood on the window. Then it happened again, another scream, but this time I could see it. Throughout the entirety of the scream, the red lights got brighter. When the scream was over, the red lights returned to normal. I was shocked and curious about the hellish secrets the house and neighbor held, but I was certainly not keen on going over there and finding out. 3 more screams occurred that night, and the same number occurred the following night. My kids were waking up at night, too, which became a problem in the house. I was sick of this, and I vowed to myself on the 3rd night if there were more screams, I would go over there to bust down his door and force him to stop. I am US fucking infantry. Any little twerp creepy neighbor that is playing screams at night and trying to scare my kids will stop after I force him to, not for me, but for my family. I will do anything to protect my family. After the 5th scream on the 3rd night, I was done. If the pattern proved correct in the last 2 nights, there would be a 6th scream, and I was going to stop him before that 6th scream. I pounded down the stairs, repeating in my head, I am the fucking infantry. I am the fucking infantry. My wife was calling out from bed for me, asking me where I was going. I am the fucking infantry. I am the fucking infantry. I busted open my front door and took a right on the sidewalk toward the neighbor's house. I am the fucking infantry. I am the fucking infantry. When I reached my neighbor's house, I expected to have to break the door down. I expected to learn the truth of the red light. Instead, all the windows and doors of the house were open, and no lights seemed to be emerging from the house. I instinctively stopped for a moment. Something felt very wrong. I am the fucking infantry. I trudged through my neighbor's front door. I was standing in his living room when I heard the front door slam behind me. All of the moonlight peering through the door was gone. The room was an absolute pitch black, and my heart sank. The 6th final scream pierced my ears. It was so loud that I winced in extreme pain and nearly fell to my knees. When I looked up, I saw a pair of wide-open bright blue eyes with a touch of red in them now, staring wide open at me, glowing brightly. When the sun dips below the horizon, it is as if the bait is equipped and the rod is cast. Each scream is like a little flick of the rod or a mere reel, harmless in retrospect. That night, after the 6th scream rang out, I realized exactly what it was. It was not a cry for help or a prank, it was bait.